I feel pretty lucky. I just got a shipment of art snacks given to me for a Valentine's Day gift from my husband. The shipment contains a whole bunch of materials that I've never used before, so I cannot wait to get into them and try them all. The first thing here is a bunch of new paintbrushes. I am most excited for this dagger brush. Now, I have never used a dagger brush before, but I have seen them being used, and it just looks like they can make all kinds of neat brush strokes. These other paintbrushes are flats, and this neat paintbrush, it has a really cool end on it, and it's just a really cute little paintbrush. I don't have any in size 4, so this is my first round size 4. It's always nice to get a new group of paintbrushes to use. Sometimes they get old and frayed, and you sometimes need them to be crisp and springy. Not saying old paintbrushes are bad, but sometimes they give textures that are unwanted. Now I'm super stoked for this. This is brush cleaner. I neglect my brushes like crazy, so it'll be nice to have something to clean with. And then I also got a little bit of washi tape. This is pretty cute. I've never used washi tape before, and I really like how thin it is, so I think I'll be able to get some use out of it. In this shipment, I also got 2 sets of paint. I've worked a little bit with metallic paint, mostly your golds and silvers, and never any of the colored varieties, so I'm pretty excited to get into that. And then I also got this vibrant colors from Van Gogh. I've never used any Van Gogh watercolors before, so it should be fun to get to know them a little bit during swatching. And then I also got some new paper. This is pretty exciting. I've never used black watercolor paper before. It feels pretty awesome to the touch. It's 140 pounds, which is something I'm used to working with already. And this second pad of paper I have here is a Canson Heritage. I've not used this class of Canson before. It's also pure cotton and 140 pounds, and it's also hot pressed, which isn't something I'm used to working with. The paper is incredibly smooth to the touch. I forgot they gave stickers. So this is the Van Gogh palette. I noticed that when I was taking the papers off that the order of the paint colors does not match this little index card that came with the package. So I was trying to be mindful of which color was which as I was putting them back in. And then I was opening this one, and I was all prepared to having to unwrap them all, and I didn't have to. It was pretty nice. And it also came with this really nice water brush, which I actually wasn't expecting at all. I don't really use these a lot, but I'm pretty excited to have one. Swatching is probably one of my favorite parts about this. I get to know the paints a little better. One thing I'll note off the start is that these Van Gogh colors don't come with pigment codes, so I don't actually know what these colors are made out of. And I'm also going to mention that although this is a pretty sweet palette, like I like the deep wells and all that, I found that it actually stopped working right away. And by stopped working, I mean that the clasp that's supposed to hold it together does not hold it together. It doesn't keep it shut. And also, the paintbrush that it comes with, it was really pokey. The end of it has a swoop, and it kept stabbing me in the hand as I was working with it. So it was not fun to use. And if I had to be out and about using it, I would probably go crazy. So this is definitely not a paintbrush I would keep in this palette. So out of all of these colors, my favorites have to be the orange, pink, purple, the sky blue, the mid-tone green, and the lime green. I would have preferred if they only gave one yellow. They are so close to the same color, it was really hard to tell them apart while I was swatching this out. But otherwise, this was a pretty fun little palette. It is quite vibrant. Now we have the Derwent metallic colors. And yeah, so this watercolor brush, it does not post at all. It was so annoying. I ended up just leaving it off. The colors, on the other hand, were pretty awesome. A lot of them re-wet really good. The ones that didn't were your standard blue, green, and red. I really had to work the blue. However, the silver and the purple really wanted to be used. Now, when it came to mixing the colors on the paper, they weren't performing very good, so I just did a few of them compared to the Vibrant palette. I found them to be just really thin, as if they were supposed to be glazed on. Up close, they look pretty fantastic though. Some of them look like they could definitely use a little bit more sparkle. And now the part I've been waiting to do, the paper tests. Now, this washi tape, my goodness, I thought it would be easier to, unstick from itself, but I had a lot of problems getting it to come off. Once I got this roll going, it really wasn't so bad. But then I started on the next roll, and I actually sped this up a little bit because it was so hard to get going. And then it rips. It actually ripped twice. But again, once it got going, it really wasn't so bad. If you are relatively new to watercolors, I highly recommend you do these kinds of tests to get to know them. It really shows you what your paper does and what your pigments do as well. The methods I chose to test out the watercolor papers are wet and wet, dry on wet, wet on dry, dry on dry, gradient, and salt. I'm also using the dagger brush, so I get to play with it a little bit while I'm doing this too. And my goodness, it is quite fun. It's got quite a bit of personality to it, so I can't wait to get to know it a little bit better. You will also notice that the bottom right-hand side says flat wash. I changed that because when I did the salt one, it was kind of like a flat wash anyways, so I changed it to gradient. I also sped up this process a little bit because it did take quite a bit of time. This hot press paper was pretty great to work with. The flat wash was absolutely beautiful. The gradient was also very nice. I also liked how the colors interacted on the wet on dry and the wet on wet. I did notice that when I was taking the washi tape off, that it kind of pulled up the fibers of the paper a bit, and that was a little disappointing. I was expecting a little bit more integrity from the paper. Overall, it didn't warp very much, as you can see from the back. I guess there was a little bit of warping, but nothing I would be too worried about. I really like how the colors blended in the wet on wet. It's just beautiful to look at. Now, I've been pretty anxious to work with this black paper. I was originally going to pull the paper out of this block, but it was so secure in there that I thought, well, maybe I will try to paint on the block and not tape the paper down. Now, the washi tape was cooperating this time, thank goodness, and I was able to get right into prepping my paper and using my jelly roll to see how it worked on the paper as well. And to be expected, it worked just fine. One thing I really love about this paper is that when you wet it, you know it's wet. And compared to the white paper counterparts, that is really nice because on white paper, it is sometimes really hard to see where the paper is still wet. Overall, I really enjoy how this paint goes on this black paper. It is much, much better than on white paper. Also, I would like to note right off the hop that the metallic paint doesn't really react with salt. At least the gold paint does not. Also, one of these colors, the sunset color, looks exactly like gold on this paper. Also, this purple is just out of this world. It wants to be used and it wants to lay down real thick. Pulling the tape off was also really nice. I didn't have anything pull up like the previous kind, and when I was done, it came off the block really easy. And when it was all dry and done with, it was real shiny And like the Canson Heritage paper, this paper also showed just a tiny bit of warping on the back. If I were to do a full piece that used a lot more water, I might change my opinion on that, but for now I'm fairly impressed with how this paper held up and how the metallic paints performed on it. I will definitely be using up these pads in the near future. I'm not quite sure what I want to paint on them yet, but I am pretty excited to keep on trying them. Maybe my next video will feature one of these papers. And any suggestions for what to put on the black paper are very welcome because I'm not quite sure what I'm going to paint on that next. See you next time.